Hello, this is episode 99 of the Inventive Marketing Club. We're here every week to help you build a better marketing strategy. On this episode, I'm going to be creating a keynote presentation, or rather showing you how I create my keynote presentations. I'm going to give you a walk through the software I use, which is Keynote, how to outline ideas, and some tips and tricks on how to capture attention. So basically, I'm going to show you some of the cool stuff that you can do in Keynote and maybe show off some of the fun slides, transitions, and stuff that you can do. This is a little taster of actually something that will come, some graphics that we can use for our 100th special episode. So see if you can work out what we're going to be doing with it. But it's just to show you what some of the cool stuff you can actually do in Keynote in terms of creating some cool animations actually. So let's start. What is Keynote? I mean, Keynote often is used for a sort of general term for a presentation given at a conference, but it's also the title of a piece of software by Apple. And we use it, certainly I use it to create slides for workshops or presentations for workshops I'm delivering, whether that's in person or on Zoom. We use it for a little bit for creating sales pitches as well. And in fact, I use that with clients to create sales pitches. So an example of that is if you've got some key things that you always like to speak to customers about, then you can actually make a little slide deck, as they call it, which you can use as an aid memoir, or it just adds a bit of color and detail to what you're already talking about. And you can just run through those slides. I don't tend to use those in person. What I do is I'll actually record a little video of me talking over the slides, a bit like this, I guess, which I can use to share with people. So if I've presented a quote for a website or pitching for them to use our marketing services, then I will use Keynote for that, to create a little presentation, just to add some detail and imagery. It saves me trying to describe things. We've also used it for product videos. Keynote's a very good program for making quick slideshows. You can also, with the help of some of the transitions, specifically one called Magic Move, which I'm going to show you later. I really love it. You can actually make some quite sophisticated animations, and you can also output it to video, which is really useful. And actually, I think Keynote's a really powerful package for doing that. And then finally, storyboarding and wireframing. One of the things that we use Keynote for is if we're creating a video, we might use Keynote or maybe another slide package to just look at the keyframes of what we're trying to produce, and then writing the text that's going on that slide, maybe dragging in some videos or reference images that are going on there, and then we can hand that to someone else to make it. In fact, yeah, we do a lot with clients where we've got different bits of video and we just want to hand that to someone else to create it. It's a really good way of giving them a quite defined brief to make that video. But we also sometimes use it when we're creating websites. If there's a little bit more going on with the website, using Keynote enables you to have a slide per page of your website, and allows you just to quickly visualize what content is going on which page without having to dive into WordPress and the overheads that brings. And why do I use it? Well, I use Macs. It's on the Mac. It's a default free program as it goes, available on the Mac. But the main reason I use it is because it works really well. It's fast, it's simple. It's simple in terms of look, but actually it's quite powerful. And it looks great. When you are outputting to screen or rendering to video, the text looks sharp and the images, even if they're small, when you expand them up in size, they look great. It makes them look as good as possible. And it's also good to know that Apple also use the software for their in-person keynotes. So the example here of Craig Federighi walking around on stage, they would have used Keynote in some part to create this presentation for some of the objects sliding in and out, which you can do as videos. You can have some of the objects which are actually video objects that move in and out as well. Keynote was actually created for Steve Jobs when he was at Apple, and that's why I think it's so good, because he had quite an exacting taste and really demanded that it was a very good, robust piece of software. And it is. Whenever I present, I tend to either present from my iPad, which I can take with me, and I just plug in a HDMI connector, and it then pushes my presentation up onto screen. It also actually gives me my presenter notes, which I will be talking about later. It keeps those on the iPad, which only I can see. The other bonus is because I'm all in on Apple, I can present on my iPhone too, which is really handy. You know, if the iPad has a fault for some reason or runs out of power, I've always got a backup that I can run exactly the same way off my iPhone. And in fact, on both of those, you can even edit the presentation as well. So if you're away somewhere and you just need to make some quick tweaks before you go live, you can do that. So it's actually a really nice platform that works from desktop all the way through to mobile. I'm just going to be looking at the desktop version because that's where I spend most of my time, but the mobile versions are very similar. So first, what I'm going to do is actually take a step back from Keynote and tell you how I look at creating a presentation. So what better example than to look at how I created this presentation? What I tend to do is start off in a notes package. It doesn't really matter, any sort of text editor will do. You may even want to just write it down on a bit of paper. But the key objective is to not worry about what your presentation is going to look like, just think about the content. I tend to just think about the key topics, the headings, questions I want to answer, and just jot those down first. And then I start filling in additional bits of detail so we can see. First, my first thought was, well, people want to know what is Keynote, maybe why I use it, and some of the examples. And we've already been through that. Next, I thought, well, I want to tackle outlining. And in fact, actually, Magic Move was next. Magic Move's my next one, templates, because they're very useful for me. But then I thought, I need to step back a bit and talk about outlining. And the reason for doing this is if you jump straight into PowerPoint or Keynote or any slide program, you start thinking about what it looks like rather than what the content is. And I think it's really important, just like how we design our websites, is to start with the content. Think about what message you're trying to convey, what story you've got, what you want your audience to leave with, what you want them to learn. Think about those bits first and just jot them down. And very key to this is don't self-center. Something I do a lot and I have to hold myself back from doing it. But when you're writing stuff down, don't delete anything. Just type it all down in whatever order it comes in. Because in that way, you will unlock your brain to come up with more ideas. If you start self-centering or editing as you go, and it's easy to do so, you stop that creative process, you stop that flow, and that's really important. So the first thing to do, just jot down your ideas for the presentation. Key things you want to get across, questions you're going to answer, and so on. Don't worry about too much about how you order that. Then the next phase is you start grouping those elements up into different topics and ideas that seem logical. That feels right to me. That we're going to move from this topic to this topic to this topic. And then you want to put that in an order that makes sense, that tells the story you want to tell. Now, if you're doing a sales pitch, it might be that you talk about your potential client first, and then you bring it around to you. Or it might be you want to talk about, well, why do you do this thing? Why do you do what you do? And then that drives the rest of the presentation you're talking about, because then you can always come back to, but we do it because of this. When you've got it in this note format, it's very easy to move things around. In fact, some people recommend writing out on little post-it notes, because then you can just stick it to your desk and just move things around in the order that you feel is right. You're not inhibited by any technology. And I really think if you can remove the technology as much as possible at this stage, it's just about ideas, not what it looks like. Some people like using a mind map. Whatever works for you, get the outlining done. Don't self-center, just get the ideas out. And importantly, find the story. Once you've done that, as part of the outlining, I then start moving that into Keynote. So I just use our template and I just create our different colored slides and put in titles for each of the key topics that I want to cover. I don't worry about exactly what the title is. I just, whatever I wrote down in my outline, in that goes. And then any sort of sub points that I need to mention, that all goes into sort of some subtext, which you can see just underneath in my image. And I think that is important, just to get that in and not worry about what it looks like. At this stage, I might want to move things around again, because I can see the order better. Everything's grouped up and it feels, I'm a very visual person, so I find it a lot easier at this stage to move things around and see how it's going to work. But I'm still not worrying about what it looks like. Yeah, I might put color to the slides, but that just speeds up the process later on. All I'm doing is you'll see when I show you in the templates that we've just got all of these colors preset out. So I'll just pick the first one, that's my slide, pick the next one when I add a new slide, and type the slide and just keep picking different colors, because it means when I come to creating it, I haven't had to think too much about what the colors should be. I just pick some random colors and things seem to work themselves out. In fact, John Hurley, who's a designer I work with, he helped us pick a lot of these colors that we use for the Inventive Marketing Club. Sort of starting with our blue as the sort of core color, and then working with other colors around that. Building a palette really where almost any color can be used on any other color, and it makes for quite a vibrant color palette, which I really like. So take your outline, copy it into Keynote. Principally have a slide for each of those topics, each of those ideas, and only once you've done that and you're happy with the order, then start visualizing it. Then you start building up the slide. So this is really when you're starting to look at each slide and say, what am I trying to communicate and what's the best way of doing it? Sometimes it's just text, just having some text on the slide, keep it to a minimum. So in this case, you've got a title like building slides. And then I've got a little bit of subtext underneath that little paragraph of text where I've kept them as they're like bullet points. They are individual lines, but I don't use any bullet points because I find that detracts visually. It adds more noise, and I just really want a sort of combination between a paragraph might work sometimes, or a couple of bullet points. So whatever you do, keeping it simple. And in this case, I'm using a fun image of a dog just to punctuate it. Where you want to use an image is where it's going to make, it's really going to enhance the message that you're already going to talk about. Now, bear in mind, what you don't want to do, and I've seen this many times before with people who are just inexperienced with presenting, is that you put too much on the slide and you rely too much on the content. That gets a bit boring because often people are showing you the back of their head, which isn't very interesting. And also they're just reading out what's on the slide. So they're not, people aren't going to engage with you because they're just going to read the slide just like you're reading the slide. What you want to be doing is you are telling the story to that person, certainly if you're presenting in person. And so the slide is really there to enhance what you're saying, not to supplant it. So keep everything simple, try and build one message per slide, and use images, absolutely, but don't use them sparingly, use them to enhance. And yeah, what I mean by don't use bullet points is don't put a huge amount of text on screen with loads of bullet points. It can look really messy and detract from the overall slide. Something else I see people doing, which can clutter a slide and really isn't necessary, I don't think, is they overbrand a slide. So their company logo will be on there all the time. They may have like sponsorship bodies or other people they're working with, and all of those are on there. Maybe they've got a very complicated design for the slide, so that has to be the same all the time. And it just gets it can get a bit boring, a bit dry, a bit and a bit confusing when you are presenting with that slide. And it actually reduces the amount of space you have to put information on there anyway. Sometimes you don't even need words. You could just have an image on there which which aligns with what you're saying. So, if I was talking about something which might be a bit odd to people, having a dog cocking his head to the side might be quite funny because it links in with that. Really, how you set up a presentation is up to you, and you've got to really use the message you're trying to get across as the key to what you're going to put on as a visual, and then think about, does it need an image? Make sure you get the right image, obviously get a licensed image, ones you can use, or do I have just text, or a bit of both? But whatever you do, keep it super simple. And then we've got, once we've sort of built all our slides up, we want to think about how we're going to transition between the two. Now, honestly, I think I just generally don't use transitions at all. I think it can slow down the presentation as I'm waiting for that transition to happen. I've definitely seen some people where they have bullet points on the screen and it shows one bullet point at a time. I think if you're going to do that, the best thing to do would be to have each of those bullet points as separate slides, and then you can just quickly flick through them rather than having them display. But I do like using slides when it adds some impact to it, and I'm going to go through a couple of my favorite ones at the moment. But I don't think you should there are so many different ways of transitioning between slides, and some are pretty crazy like this one. And I don't think you should go too crazy unless you want to make a point and you want to show, you want to really highlight something. So you need something quite dramatic to happen on screen. I often like to have a slide sometimes that is contrary to what I'm talking about. You have to know your slide deck quite well. And depending on how many times I've run that presentation, I might not be confident enough to do that, but sometimes I like dropping that in. It's quite fun. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to come out of this presentation and I'm going to show you how to start playing around in Keynote. We're going to look at some transitions and some other things, how to add images and so on. The first thing I'm going to do, if I just come out of this, so stop sharing, drop that out, just go straight back in. There we are. So this is the Keynote interface. What I'm going to do is I'm going to first of all show you an example of some transitions. It's including my favorite one. Have I said that already? A magic move. So what we've got here is a sequence of slides. And you would have seen these slides right at the beginning. But if we were to play them, nothing would happen. We don't get any transitions between the slides. So what I'm going to do is, let me just put that to none. What I would want to do is just, I want to transition this slide so it looks a bit more like a comic strip. So there's a bit more movement in rather than just flicking between each one. So what we'll do with this is I will just maybe move that background a little bit. Actually, let's just set the background here. So I copy that background, put it in here, send it to the back. Now they're exactly the same. What I'd like to do is just move this slightly. So I'll put that there. And then we move to this slide. We want that background to have moved. And I will enlarge it a little bit. That's good. And so if I preview that, we'll go and add an effect, magic move. So we can see that it moves over 2 seconds. Now that's a bit too slow for me. So I'm going to reduce to 7 seconds, which feels about right for me. It's nice and fast. Works certainly for this style. So that's fine. We can see that one character fades out, another character fades in, and the background moves. Let's have a bit of movement for those characters. So what I'm going to do is get this character here. He is going to move to one side. So to do that with magic move, it's very clever. It will, as long as you've got the same objects on different slides, it will automatically move and grow and change the opacity and basically auto transition between the object. So if I put this fella on this page, but I will drag him off the screen like that. If I do my transition, we can see as it moves, he moves off screen too. Obviously now she just dissolves onto the screen. We are going to do the same with her. So I copy her, put her onto the previous one, drag her off. And then when I preview, she comes on, he goes off. That simple transition is super easy to do. You saw I did it in a couple of seconds there. Once you know it, it's very easy. And that, in this case, helps tell a literal story that we've got going on here. But it could be that you are showing something building up over a period of time. So it could be that you've got maybe you're talking about some biology and you've got a cell in the middle, and then you go on to the next slide and you've got more cells. Well, you can have those cells sort of move in and move together around each other using the sort of basic animation of these slides. And it just helps to tell the story. And if it does do that, if it does help build on what you're trying to say, then absolutely you should be using it. There is something else that's quite important as well. Let me just delete this from here. If we were to play the slide, then we hear a bit of audio, which I will just go here and play. It's just some Office Atmos background. But what you can do, which is quite clever, is if we make sure this option is enabled, which it is by default, play across slides, I can copy it onto this one. And then what will happen is when I come to this slide, it will fade in, the audio will fade in, and then it will continue playing when the transition is happening. So it won't actually stop and restart again, which means I could string a load of these together with some Office Atmos in the background, and the sound will keep playing even though the slides are moving and animating between each other. Something else you can do in the transitions, if I go back to animate at the top here, I can actually get it to start the transition on click, which is the default. So if I click the mouse button or I tap on the screen, if it's an iPad, or I press the key cursor buttons, then it's going to move to the next slide. Or I can make it happen automatically. So I might want to say, leave this on screen for, let's say, 3 seconds, and then activate the transition. And that becomes very useful if you want to output video, which I'll show you a bit later on. So there are some other transitions, I think. Let's have a look at some of the other ones that I quite like. So let's go through them here. If we click on this, we've got drift. Let's see if I can find that. Drift and scale. Oh, no. So drift and scale is actually a transition that is available directly on some text. It might be showing off screen at the moment, but let me preview that. So that sort of comes in and then goes out. And it's the text transition style I was using at the beginning. We've got push, which is actually a whole template transition. So let me find push. It's quite a good one because one slide will push the other slide on. And you can actually change that direction. It can be left, right, top, bottom, and you can change the speed of it. Reveal's very similar, but one will sort of be pulled over the top. And then we've got grid. Now, grid looks pretty cool and actually work quite nicely for a comic strip. There's lots of other ones. There's normal sort of wipe, like a sort of Star Wars slow wipe. You've got a fade through color, which is quite cool. So it could fade, by default, it's to be black, but it could be your brown color, and a sort of classic dissolve, which is quite nice. But as I said, you should use your judgment with these and use them where they add impact rather than adding them to every slide. And I know most people don't now, actually. Most people keep slides pretty straightforward, but I think slide transitions are really useful when you find the right time to use them. Moving on, what I'm going to do is just show you a few features here. So just a couple of quick things, actually. Let me just show you around the Keynote interface. On the left-hand side, we've got the slide navigator. So this shows all of our slides. We can even click on this view button here and change it to look at a light table. So we can sort of zoom out and see them all at a glance, which is quite nice if you want to, if you've got lots of slides particularly. But I prefer this default view. That works well for me. Also, we can change the zoom, so we can, I like to have it quite far out, but you could have it to zoom in a bit closer if you've got a big screen, or maybe you want lots of space around it. It's up to you, but I tend to work on either fit slide or 75%. It depends what I'm doing. If we want to add a new slide, we can do it here, and then you can pick a slide from your template. Obviously, when you load the default templates, they're going to look different to this. I'm using our template, which is why it makes it very easy for me to add new slides in. We've also got play here. If I hit that, then it's going to play in a new window, or it's going to play it on a second screen, or if it's on the iPad, it's going to output it to your HDMI connection. So that's quite simple there, and it's a nice big button actually. On PowerPoint, I find it's tucked away right down the bottom unless you know the key combination, so it's a bit frustrating. Got some other options up here, table and chart. I actually don't really use these, but if you're doing a sales pitch and you've got numbers to put in it, then it might be quite useful. Then you've got text, so you can just click on that and you can just change a bit of text here, click on format, and then you've got lots, and the text tab here, and then you've got lots of options that you can use to change the size of it. Also, I hadn't changed that. Let me make sure it's selected. Let's go to impact again. Really make that big. Change the color of it. By default, Keynote's colors are very nice, but if you're on a Mac, which you would be, you can use this little custom color picker here. I don't know if you can see that on screen, but it basically allows you to select any colors or use a color wheel to pick colors as well. Yes, don't spend too long dazzling them, Ben. I've got to rush on. That's a key thing I'm showing there in terms of having comments. So if you're sharing a physical file, a Keynote file with people, they can actually add comments, just like you can editing a Word file, I guess. Or you can actually share this live. So if I'm creating a big presentation and I'm working on it with someone else, I can actually share it, a link with them. It'll then share with in their Keynote, or if they don't have Keynote, it'll share in a web version of Keynote, so they can actually go through all the slides and make comments and move things around, and we can work collaboratively on it. And that works pretty well, actually. It works mostly live. It's very good. what else have we got here? Oh yeah, inspector panels. So these are all inspector panels here. We've got main formatting. I'm going to bring that back actually. So if I click on an object, then I can change its formatting. So I've got basic text formatting there. I've got different styles, like I can have a background fill, or I can make a border around something. I'm going to go through those a little bit later. Specific one for text, and then arrangements of size, where it is in the layer palette, whether you want to bring it forward or backwards and so on, whether you want to rotate things around, which is always quite fun as well. And then we've got our animation section here. So we're either clicking on different elements we want to animate, or if we just click on the background there and select nothing, then we're animating the slide itself. And then we've got document view here. So generally I'm in here when I want to view the size of the presentation, and I generally work in 16:9, so that's standard video 1080p, but you can customize that and make it bigger or smaller if you want. And the other option is 4:3, but you probably wouldn't use that. And then also, if you, I've made myself a custom theme here, but you, there are lots of different themes that come with Keynote, so you can actually take all of your slides with all of the templates, and as long as you've got matching templates in a different theme, you can just swap the whole theme and the whole design changes. I'm not going to dive too much into that side of it yet in this presentation. Let's move on. Templates. So I've got a special slide for this. So with templates, if I want to add a slide for my list of templates, then I just click add slide and add it in, and I can start typing away. But how do you get to those templates? How do you make them up? Well, you do that by clicking edit slide layout here. So if I click edit slide layout, I go into a slightly different view where I've got all of my templates that I've basically pre-made. So these are like independent slides, but I can give them a name and I style everything up how I want. And then once I've done that, I can use that template slide for a number of different slides in my presentation. The benefit is, if I then change that slide design, then that's going to change throughout my presentation. So let's just quickly make a slide. In fact, I'm going to take this one, but I will just duplicate it. So I will put special. That's my special slide. Let's pick some color. So I'm going to take a default background color. I'm just going to make it blue. That's like, yeah, no, I'll make it this blue here. And then we'll make the text. We are going to go for a lighter blue. Yeah, their default palette really isn't very nice. And I'm going to make this white. That's great. So that's our, we've custom made that. And in fact, I'm going to change the text. I'm going to move it up to the top here. I'm going to use this selection here to position the text at the bottom of the box and on the left of the box. And for this one, I'm going to make it at the top of the box and on the left of the box. And then I'm going to align the bits of text together. There we go. And you actually notice there's a little yellow bar that appears. That yellow bar is an alignment tool. So if I actually pop this in the middle, if I can find it, there. So that shows me that that box is dead in the middle. Obviously the text isn't. To make the text in the middle, I'd have to just make it centralized like that. But it's really useful for aligning bits together with each other. So like this, I know that that now is aligned centrally and they're going to line up. In fact, move that down a bit. Yeah, great. So there's my new slide. So in fact, let's delete this one. And I'm going to go add slide. I've got my new slide here. My slide title. Stuff here. So that's my slide. And I can obviously copy that as many times as I like. I can make changes to it. So my slide title 2 and my slide title 3. So I've customized all of those. But let's say I want to change the background, make it a completely different color for all those slides. I can click on the slide here, click edit slide layout. Let's change the background. I'm going to make it, let's make it a dark green. I'm going to change the text here and make the text background a light green. And so now all of these slides have been changed. So it's well worth investing a little bit of time in templates. If you make a lot of presentations, it's going to save you so much time. And the other benefit is once you've really spent some time on making one template, you can just copy and paste that and update the colors. And then you've, like me, you've got a variety of different colors you can work with. If I delete this template, it's going to say, oh, 3 slides already use this. Do you want to pick a new one for it? And I do. I'm going to pick this one. I'll delete that. Nothing's using that one. And now those slides have been updated to use the new slide I used. So using templates is very useful and can save a lot of time, but only really if you use slides a lot. Anything else in templates? Oh, I should just show you, if you want to have, let's have a look at this one. So if I go to the title text here, if I want that to be my dummy text and I want that to be changeable, then actually, let me do it on a different one here. That's better. So I've got text here. I can define it as a text placeholder. And that means I just give it a little name. So we've got name 1, is that name? Yeah, name 2. So they've all got individual names, which means that I can edit them. If I just had normal text in here without defining it as a text placeholder, then that text is going to be uneditable when I go into my actual slide. So I'll just show you that. Let's take Jonathan's text out of here. And I'm going to make a new slide using those. These, by the way, often come on the show. So we've got Nikki, Jack, and John. We can see that I can't change this text here, but this text I can. And that's because I didn't say that as a placeholder. In fact, saying if you want to edit that, you have to edit slide layout. So let me go back, define that as a placeholder, put it as name 2. Brilliant. And I often sometimes use this slide if I've got people I'm mentioning, I might use this because it's got a built-in crop for images which makes them into a circle. It's called a mask actually, and so you can fit a shaped mask that goes over an image. And what it means I can do, if I just quickly show you in the slide layout, if I click on the image, I can see this is defined as a media placeholder. And so that means if I want to just change an image, it will allow me to just drag and drop an image over the top and it will just replace that image exactly. And I can replace it with anything. There's my head, or I could put a nice picture of some lovely breakfast in there. And you can even, if the image is too big to fit, you can double click and then just shift it around just so it fits perfectly how you want. Actually, you can do this as well. You can zoom in and out and just crop things however you want. It's a very, very useful tool. So let's move on. So we've got all those. I think that's everything I want to cover there. Let's move on to this. So I just want to show you a quick way to add impact with an image, just like I had when we were building up slides earlier. I've got a little note, add puppy here. I better do that. Let me delete that, get it out of the way. I'm going to drop in a picture of a dog I downloaded earlier. Now that dog, like a lot of images you might get off the internet, oh, and make sure you get licensed images you're allowed to use. A lot of images will have, may not have a transparent background. That doesn't matter. Keynote's got a great feature for that. And often if I just click remove background, it is going to get rid of the background completely. However, if it doesn't work, there is an option just to hover over roughly the color you want to get rid of, and then you can just drag in and out until it's just right for you. However, I'm going to just leave it as default because I'm happy with that. Click done. But the dog doesn't look like it's really there. So I'm just going to add a touch of detail, click on the dog, and I'm going to go to Style, Shadow, and I can add a drop shadow. So let's just alter that a little bit. Offset, blur. That doesn't look realistic. I could add a curved shadow. Don't know if we can see it on here, actually. Might not be able to see it. Yeah, it's not something we can see actually on here. Or what I'm going to add is a contact shadow. So it's going to look like the dog is, well, at the moment, floating above a level. This will actually work better if I drag in an icon. You can see more clearly. So I've got a little icon here for Keynote. What I can do is put shadow, contact shadow, drag it down here. And we can see that the Keynote icon is floating above a surface. And we can actually change the offset to make it sat on the surface or move further away. And you can see the shadow actually changes as if it is moving further away from that. So let's just adjust the contact shadow on the dog. So I'm actually going to move it closer in. So it looks a bit more realistic. I'm going to increase the blur a little bit, and I'm going to increase the opacity. Just change the offset. That looks a little bit more realistic, like the dog is actually present on there. So that's really super useful, being able to click on an image and just remove background. You can do some simple tweaks, like if you just want to adjust the a few basic tools, you can do that. It's got auto enhance, or you can go into, I don't know if you can see this tool palette, but you can actually adjust the colors as well. Personally, I prefer to get the image right outside of the program and then bring it in. And that includes removing the background, but for some people, this might be the easier way of doing it. That's everything we've got here. So let's move on. Speaker notes. Right, so these are really useful. You know, I was talking about keeping your slides simple. How do you do that? If you've got lots to say and lots to remember, you use speaker notes. This is a, as it says down here, a great space to remind you of what to say. So you can actually put a lot of detail in here, and you might have seen in some of the slides, I've got additional information down the bottom as an aid memoir for me. I often find that just by putting the detail into the notes, and it could actually be, you know, when we've got the outline and you've got lots of extra detail there and you don't want it to go on the slide, you don't know where it should go, I just chuck it in speaker notes. Because I find just the act of putting it in speaker notes and writing it down and preparing those means I'm less likely to need them, because I feel more confident because I've sort of gone through that part of the presentation. So it's more useful. But it can, you know, if you get stuck, you can always look at the speaker notes so you can find out what to say. And it does help you practice. If you've not run a presentation through before, it's definitely worth practicing at least once, if not a couple of times, and ideally trying to practice in front of other people. And it can help make sure you touch on all of those points. So speaker notes are incredibly useful for helping to keep your slides clear. As we finish off, I just want to give you a couple of presentation tips, some of which have been given to me. In fact, most of them have been given to me over the time that I've been presenting workshops in person and on Zoom. The key thing is to keep it simple, and that's your message, your presentation, the visuals. You ideally want people to remember a few key things. Now, it's slightly different with what I'm doing here because I'm trying to go through and create a resource that's a video that you can sort of scroll back through and watch it many times. But if you're creating a presentation that is going to be seen once in person or recorded, then you really want to keep it simple and try and have one or just a few core messages you want people to take away. Try and have one message per slide or one sort of key topic per slide. Don't have too much going on. And when you're presenting, I find it helps to smile. And I was told this actually when I started. I wanted to present and I went on a presentation workshop. And one of the things they said to do is just take a deep breath, smile to your audience and try and enjoy it. Because if you enjoy it, then your audience will enjoy it. If you are nervous, people will want you to do well. But if you're really super nervous and you're messing things up and you're making you know it's an issue for you, people feel awkward and they're going to feel awkward watching you. So just smile, take a deep breath and enjoy it. And obviously, if you're in person, try and make eye contact with the people that you are talking to. That really helps. I do find it helps to practice. Often, a lot of my workshops, I do try and run either the same workshop or use similar content in lots of different workshops. That helps me. It's also, it means I'm reiterating the same messages. And definitely, yeah, don't read your notes. So either if you've got everything on screen, don't read the screen, don't be reading your presenter notes, do try and learn them. It really helps. And I think the whole act of going through this process means that you will know your content really well. Just moving on, one final thing I want to share before we finish is exporting to video. If nothing else, you can use Keynote as a quick and dirty way of creating a video. And using Magic Move, they can be pretty complex. You can make some really interesting things. All you need to do is just create your slides as you normally would. And then you can either, when you are exporting to video, so you go up to File, Export Video, I think it is, and then you get presented with this dialog box where you can basically get it to automatically go onto the next slide after a number of seconds. And you can alter this. You might be happy with the default, or you might say, I want about 10 seconds per slide. Or what you can do, and I'll do it on this one, if we go to animate, I can go to start transition automatically. And I could say, I want this transition to happen every 5 seconds. And you can actually, if I go Command A, I can select all of my slides, and then I can say automatically, I want all slides to march forward on every 5 seconds. Oh, it's dived right back there. And that means when you export it to video, you can just set these go to set next slides to 0, and each slide will move forward on whatever delay you put on that particular slide. So if you want to control and customize that a little bit, that's definitely the way to do it. And that's what we did with this example video I'm going to play you. So we use the magic move feature to move and zoom product images around, and for each slide I just controlled how long I want that on, just long enough so people can read it, but not too long where they're waiting for the next slide to happen. And this is a super simple video. It's currently a draft video that we're going to be using in a masthead on the product page. And as there's a little note there, video to be added, that's because we could add video directly onto that page, or I'd probably add it in a video editor because it would look better. But it's a really useful tool to create some simple animations like that. Hopefully you found that useful. Now, next week, we've got our special 100th episode. I'm not going to say too much about it, except that it's an experiment, which we are including clients and friends of Rather Inventive in. We're going to stream it live on YouTube, and so you're more than welcome to watch it live. We probably won't have anyone joining us live for that. We just want them on YouTube. Otherwise, it's going to be hectic enough as it is. So do watch us live on YouTube, and we will be recording it as normal. So that will come out on the Wednesday after that. So that's next week. Our special 100th episode, and it's going to be a little bit different. We're here every Friday at 10 a.m. If you want to ask us a question or be a guest, email support@ratherinventive.com. Remember, all episodes are available on ratherinventive.com/club. That's ratherinventive.com/club. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next week.